Hey everyone, Will Gwyn here with No Beat is Safe Entertainment, and this is my new series called The Science of Songwriting. Look, I'm a singer and songwriter just like a lot of you, and over the last 10 years, I've been putting together a series of techniques to help songwriters just like you write better songs. And you know what? I think I'm onto something. If you want to learn how to write attention-grabbing, head-bobbing, can't get it out of your head type songs, then stay tuned, because in this episode, we're going to discuss steps 5 through 8 in the mix process. And those steps are gain staging your leads, your layers, setting automation, and setting delays. These tips can definitely be used by anyone and hopefully help you hone your skills on writing a much better song. I mean, after all, songwriting is a science. Okay, so let's get started. Step number 5, gain staging. Now, what gain staging is basically part of the mix where you set the levels or stage the levels of volume to optimize the sound quality of your mix. So this is what it looks like. First, open up your console view to where you can see all your faders and controls. Now, when it comes to gain staging, the best way to do it is to lower all your faders down to 0 and then start with your instrumental. Okay, so once you have all your levels on 0, like I said, we have to first start with our instrumental. The reason for doing this is that once you set your instrumental to its optimum volume level, then you can blend all your other layers, including your leads and your background vocals, to complement your instrumental. So, when setting the volume level of your instrumental, the area you want to shoot for is around -18 to -16 dBs. The reason for this is because it allows for enough headroom for your mix to be mastered later on if you choose to do so, or a limiter can be added. So, here we go. So, if you notice, my dB meter is peaking right around -18, -16 dBs. So that means it's right in that sweet spot. Now, the next thing you want to do is start with your lead vocals and blend them in to complement your instrumental. Once again, trying to get them right in that sweet spot of -18 to -16 dBs. So what it looks like is like this. Now, if you notice, where I set the volume for my lead is a little high. It's right around -10 dBs. Now, that's about 6 off from where we want it to be. But the reason for this is some of the words that I use caused a spike in the volume during the chorus. Now, there's a trick to bring this down back to where I want it to be so that there's consistency throughout the entire chorus. But I'm going to show you that after I finish setting the rest of my layers. Check this out. Try to pull myself together, even though I know it's hard. These screws. And there you have it. The key is to set your instrumental around -18, -16 dBs, and that will set your standard for the rest of the mix. Now, before I show you how to fix the spikes in my lead vocal, I want to show you this next tip. Step number 6 is panning. Now, the way we get our mix to sound more full after we've blended it in to the instrumental, pan each of our layers either to the hard left or the hard right. So as you see here, every other one of my layers is being panned either to the hard left or the hard right. So what this does is give your mix a more stereo sound so the audio sounds like it's coming from a much wider source. So let's check out the difference. Try to pull myself together, even though I know it's hard. These screws, keep falling. But when I try to catch the pieces, I just keep falling apart. Try to pull myself together, even though I know it's hard. These screws, keep falling. But when I try to catch the pieces, I just keep falling apart. See, if you notice, what it also did was open up the middle of the mix so that the instrumental and the lead vocal could sit in there clearly. All right, now step 7. Like I said earlier, if we notice on our lead vocals, every once in a while, the volume would peak out of that sweet spot of -18, -16 dBs to about -12, -10, and that's way too high. So for step number 7, automation. How automation works is like this. Now, pay attention to the meter right here. If you notice, when the song first starts off, it's going to be a lot lower, but every so often, the volume level is going to spike, kicking it out of that safe range. What we want to do is open up an envelope that allows us to control the volume, and we're going to make a little pocket right there that's going to pull down a lot of those peaks to where it keeps it consistently right around the -18, -16 mark. Here we go. Try to pull myself together, even though I know it's hard. These screws, keep falling. But when I try to catch the pieces, I just keep falling apart. The screws, all these screws, all my screws, they keep falling loose. When I try to pull myself together, even though I know it's hard. These screws, keep falling. But when I try to catch the pieces, I just keep falling apart. The screws, all these screws, all my screws, they keep falling. When I try to pull myself together, even though I know it's hard. These screws, but when I try to catch the pieces, I just keep falling apart. Now, if you notice, I use my automation tool to continue to adjust the volume around these peaks that were forcing my volume to go up too high. Now, what I just did was a very quick run through of how the automation tool works. But in order to maintain a much more consistent sound, you would have to expand this WAV file out and then make sure you're not bringing down parts that are already too low, but only bringing down the parts that are peaking too high. What you can also do with automation is bring up the parts that are a little too low to hear so that the low parts are now hearable and the high parts aren't distorting your mix. Now, step number 8, delays. Now, what a delay is a plugin that gives your recordings a much more studio feel. And if you manipulate the settings the right way, allow for your recording to sound wider or even can add more depth to your recording. Now, there's 2 ways to use a delay. You can either add it to your bus so that multiple tracks all get the same effect from the delay, or you can add it directly to the individual track. And in this situation, I added this delay directly to the track. So the trick that I'm about to show you for this example is a right and left staggered delay. How it works is by offsetting the left from the right side, you actually allow for your recording, your lead vocal, to sound more full. So I'm gonna go ahead and solo this track so you can hear exactly what I'm talking about. Here we go. Try to pull myself together, even though I know it's hard. But these screws. But when I try and catch the pieces, I just keep falling apart. The screws, oh, these screws, yeah, my screws, they keep falling loose. When I try to pull myself together, even though I know it's hard, but these screws. But when I try and catch the pieces, I just keep falling apart. The screws, oh, these screws, yeah, my screws. Now, when you hear it, it almost sounds like it's a ping pong effect. That's because you hear the sound coming out of the left side a little bit faster than you hear it coming out of the right side. So it makes it seem like it's in a much bigger room. Now, if you notice, some of the echo might have been a little exaggerated. Well, I'm going to show you how to manipulate these other dials in order to make the echo or the effect a little more subtle so it blends in much better in your mix. So let's just start with the feedback and the mix. What the feedback is how obvious the effect is going to be on the vocal. So by adjusting this, you can reduce the amount of the effect that's applied to your vocal. Now the mix is just how well you blend the feedback into the natural sound of the recording. So check this out. Try to pull myself together, even though I know it's hard, but these screws. But when I try and catch the pieces, I just keep falling apart. The screws, oh, these screws, yeah, my screws, they keep falling loose. When I try to pull myself together, even though I know it's hard, but these screws. But when I try and catch the pieces, I just keep falling apart. The screws, oh, these screws, yeah, my screws, they keep falling loose. When I try to pull myself together, even though I know it's hard, but these screws. Now the trick is to play around with the feedback and the mix until it fixes your liking. So now, for your highs, your mids, and your lows, by adjusting these controls will help reduce the clarity of the echo. So if you don't want your echo to sound as clear as your lead, you would have to adjust your highs, your mids, and lows in order to get it to sound a little more distorted and a little more far off in the distance to help give a little more depth to your lead vocal. So, by playing around with your highs, your mids, and your lows, you can manipulate how strong of an echo is going to be applied to your vocal. Now, if you want to knock some of that clarity off out of your highs, your mids, and your lows, you would want to adjust the lows in order to make it sound a little less obvious and a little more far off. Check this out. Try to pull myself together, even though I know it's hard, but these screws. But when I try and catch the pieces, I just keep falling apart. The screws, oh, these screws, yeah, my screws, they keep falling loose. When I try to pull myself together, even though I know it's hard, but these screws. Now, if you notice, when I took it to 0, it sounded like the lead vocal was being sung twice. But when I dropped it all the way down to -20, you could kind of hear a little resonance behind the voice, but it wasn't as obvious as the lead. So, by staggering the timing of the effect from the left and the right speaker, you give it a much more wider feel and add a little depth. And by playing with your highs, your mids, and your lows, you can help to knock off some of the clarity of your echo so it's not as obvious and it doesn't cut through your mix too harshly. And the feedback and the mix help to adjust how obvious the effect is on your lead. So let's listen to the delay with the instrumental and see how it sounds. Myself together, even though I know it's hard. Well, that's all for today. So tell me, how do you go about doing the steps that we discussed in today's episode? Please leave a comment below because I would love to hear your techniques. Also, if there's any topics or any ideas that you have for the show, please leave a comment in the description below and I would love to talk about them on a later episode. If you want to hear the finished product of this song now, just click the link in the description below and it'll take you to listen and you don't have to wait to the end of the series. So, in the next episode, what we're going to discuss is steps 9 through 12 on the mixing process. So please make sure you tune in to see how we wrap up our mix. Oh, and before we go, if you want to hear some more of my other work, just click the link in the description below and it'll take you to listen to some more music off of my catalog. And if you would like to get your hands on one of these exclusive No Beat Is Safe Entertainment hoodies, just click the link in the description below next to merchandise and it'll take you right to my store. Well, once again, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure you tune in next week when we wrap up the mix. I can't wait to see you. I'm excited. And until next time, after all, songwriting is a science.